you leave Glamour magazine after 17 years. Why did you leave?
Because they made me redundant. What I struggle with Harry and Meghan is when they said they wanted to leave, they wanted to have a quiet life. I think it was very few people who couldn't sympathise with that.
Harry and Meghan, who wears the trousers in that relationship?
Oh man, who do you think? I think Harry likes that Meghan takes charge. For want of a better word, sort of indifferent to the royal family. I'm not pro-royal, I'm not anti-royal. I'm an Australian who's done very well out of being part of the Commonwealth.
Jo Elvin is a multi-award winning broadcaster and editor. 2019, she was nominated to be a part of the commentary team for the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. She's most well known as the editor-in-chief for the magazine called Glamour. Glamour is the biggest selling women's magazine, not just in the UK, but in Europe. Be happy, never content. Make sure you subscribe. Right, welcome back to the podcast, my podcast, The Stephen Sully Study. We're here at Woodbury House in Mayfair, and I've got my next fantastic guest in front of me, Jo Elvin, not Elvin.
Jo Elvin. Elvan. Let's go French.
Let's do that.
Elvan. Yeah.
Let's do that.
No, Elvin. Yeah.
So, I'm going to paraphrase and try and read my disgusting handwriting. Multi-award winning editor and broadcaster. Most well known as the editor-in-chief of Glamour. I'm actually going to read you something here, okay?
All right. Oh, gosh.
She is witty, sassy, utterly professional, and empathetic with her readers. How true is that?
Who said that?
A man
Was
called
that my mum?
Albert Reid, the MD, or is it Condé Nast?
Condé Nast. That was my former boss. Yes.
Okay.
But that was in the press release when they made me redundant.
Oh right.
So and I demanded they say something nice in the press release. So I'm not sure how sincere that one is. But yeah.
So I mean, this is the first time I'm meeting you. I've done a lot of reading about you. You're clearly a success. You're clearly an influencer as well, believe it or not, and so many other things. How close to the truth is that statement about you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's not very nice to ask to rate yourself that way. I like to think I'm funny.
You sassy?
Yeah, definitely.
Describe yourself in a sassy way. Like, what is sassy about you?
I swear a lot. Is that sassy? I don't know. I don't know how I would describe that. But I try very hard, and I think particularly in stressful times, to see the dry humour in things. So I think that's probably where that comes from.
Dry humour. I'm sort of moving conversation here, but The Office.
Oh yeah.
Ricky Gervais, as in Brent. I mean, having dry sense of humour yourself. I mean, you must love.
Are you like actually saying that you... did I just sound like I'm describing myself like David Brent would describe himself?
No.
That's very dangerous territory. That is not... See, this is why I hate sort of like, how would you describe yourself? I think that's everybody else's job to decide what they think of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. As I said off air, and I'm going to say it again, you've got a really motivational story. You're clearly from Australia. You came over in 1992, I believe, with £400 in your pocket.
That was worth £1 million in those days.
Yeah, a fortune.
Yeah.
And you had a 2-lined CV.
Yeah.
And now you've become one of the country's most successful editors, as well as multiple other things. Tell me about that journey. Why did you come over in 1992, and how did you go from 400 quid in your pocket to a very successful individual?
I think, thank you very much. I think the short answer is I worked very hard. When I was growing up in Australia, in Sydney, I was obsessed with British pop culture, British magazines, the whole thing. And I was very good from a young age at writing. I could, that was my strongest subject at school, like writing essays and all that sort of stuff. And so when I figured out that I could combine writing for a living with meeting pop stars, oh my God, that was like, I mean, I'd love to say that, I wanted to win a Pulitzer Prize and I wanted to be the Emily Maitlis of the day. But no, I just wanted to meet Spandau Ballet and Duran Duran. And so that's why I was really focused on coming to Britain. So my first thing was I started work. I got an internship at a teenage magazine in Australia called Dolly, which was like a really big magazine there back in the day. After about 6 or so months, they offered me a job. I took the job. I dropped out of university because I knew that all I cared about was that job. After doing that for about 2 or 3 years, I took a short-term job as a publicist for the show Neighbours, the biggest Aussie cliche. Although I've heard this morning it's coming back. They made the big deal about going and now they're coming back, which is the worst idea I've ever heard. And I worked there, I'm telling you. So I did that thinking, well, if I've worked at Neighbours, all those poms are crazy for Neighbours. So I'll just get any job I want when I get there, which did not turn out the way at all. But then I decided I wanted to go backpacking. So the problem, Stephen, is I'm very old. So if you want the history, it's going to take a while. But so then I was working and waitressing. I was working in pubs. I was living in a pub and applying for magazine jobs. And it probably took me about 6 months to get a magazine job when I was here. And then, so that's where my career started. So early 93, I got my first magazine job at TV Hits.
Nice. Australia or London?
Oh, gosh, it's so hard, isn't it? That's the thing that nobody tells you when you're 22 and you come over thinking you'll be here for a couple of years. And then like a dickhead, you meet someone and you fall in love, and then you build a life over here, and then you have a family over here, and you get a dog. And so suddenly you've got 2 countries where your heart is. So it's really hard. I think that my daughter's at the age now where she would kill me in my sleep if we moved to Australia, because she's got her whole life here and her plans here. But I miss it. But I also love London. So I don't know. That's too hard.
I mean, I'm not even from Australia and I already missed the weather over there.
Yeah. And particularly, I have been windblown and soaked to the bone several times already today. It's not so much that, it's the dark that really depresses me here. It's this time of year, the clocks have just gone back and it's dark at 3 o'clock. That took me many, many years to learn not to get depressed with that. It really did.
A good red wine will help that out.
A good red wine, and I genuinely, I check at this time of year the sunsets and sunrises, and just being able to see that every day from December we'll get a minute more daylight is my mental health crux. I really need it. I need it.
Yeah. So you've appeared on GMTV, The Apprentice, got Guan's program, which is called Miss Naked Beauty.
Oh my God, you've really gone back through the archives. This is so long ago. And can I wasn't on The Apprentice. I'd rather die than do that. I was used to be a panelist on the after show.
Right.
Sort of like, giving opinions on them all.
So that's actually called The Apprentice, You're Fired.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then also Great British Hairdresser. Going back to what we just spoke about coming over, them years ago, and then seeing yourself and being on these shows. I mean, you must feel a great sense of achievement now.
Yes, I probably do. I think I don't sort of look back and think, God, aren't I amazing? I do look back and think, God, it's been fun. I've been really lucky to have a lot of fun in what I do. And it was the Glamour job, I think, when I got that in 2000, and I launched Glamour magazine in 2001, because that became such a big success and people loved it. That is the thing that unlocked all these other opportunities. So if you're the editor of a big selling magazine, it does tend to mean that at the time TV networks were calling because they just want you a quote unquote expert in whether it's fashion or Great British Hairdresser, hairdressing, and they want the involvement and the cooperation with the magazine. So I'm not sure if it's all because I'm so amazing. I feel I'm very lucky that I had that association that opened up all these other doors.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
So it's the biggest selling women's magazine across the UK and also Europe. Did I read somewhere over 2 million people read it every single week?
In its time when I was there, it had a readership. This is like, it's so boring, all the technicalities. But yeah, so when I was at You magazine until recently, which is the Mail on Sunday supplement, that's a weekly magazine and that has 2 million readers a week. Glamour magazine, as the market leader, was around 550,000 copies a month. So then you're looking at a readership of about 1.2 million. It's this weird thing where they decide that for every one publication that's bought, several more people will actually see it. So you get to fudge a readership a bit more.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
What I was really impressed about when I was doing a bit of research. Back in 2019, the BBC got you and a few others to commentate on the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah, I couldn't quite believe they asked me to do that as well.
I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal stuff. It's like David Beckham or like Sir Elton John. These are the type of people that you would expect to.
And Joe Elvin.
Yeah, exactly. To be affiliated with such a monumental and a thing that has such big magnitude. You've been invited to that, which is great. Question, then a serious question: are they lizards?
Yes, I can confirm today, exclusively on this podcast. No, oh bless them. God, we were so full of optimism for Harry and Meghan that day, weren't we? I mean, I was just part of the commentary team on BBC. I was there to talk about fashion, and I honestly thought I would be on air 5 minutes of the whole day, and they kept pulling me in to say, so Joe, who do you think's designed the dress? I was like, I don't know, damn it, I don't. But I threw out so many names guessing who might be the designer that I actually got it right just by sheer law of averages. It's like, if you say enough names, one of them will be right. And I think I was one of the first people to go, oh, I'm hearing Givenchy, and then it turned out to be that. So I feel like I got away with it. I bluffed my way through that whole day, believe me.
How did you get nominated for it?
I just, again, because I'd had all the experience of Glamour magazine, and I'd had by that point a lot of television experience, and they were looking for somebody who could talk without freezing on camera, on live TV, about fashion. I imagine they spoke to lots of people. There may well have been people they approached who turned it down. I have no idea, but I just went and had a cup of tea with the producer. They asked me a load of questions. I didn't hear from them for about 6 weeks, and I figured, well, that was a very nice meeting, but nothing's come of it. And then all of a sudden it was, can you come in and talk? We want you to do this thing for 2 days in Windsor.
And did you get to meet the Duke and Duchess of Sussex?
No, of course no. They were a bit busy. They were getting married. Yeah.
Have you met any of the royal family?
I have actually met the Queen and Prince Philip. So that was many years ago. It was 2012. They were just about to do a big tour to Australia. And so they had a reception at the palace for Australians working in the UK. And I don't know how the hell I ended up on somebody's list, but I was on that list. And it was one of the best evenings of my life. I got to meet Hugh Jackman, for crying out loud. Kylie Minogue was there. I met my dear friend I met her that night, and she's now one of my best friends, Kathy Lett, the celebrated author. So yeah, that was a damn good party that Liz threw for us. I was really pleased.
Yeah. I actually met Prince Philip as well.
Did you?
Yeah, through my boxing background. So I'll give you
Is he the one that punched you in the face?
He did, yeah. And I'll never forgive him for that. So basically, I used to box a club called Bromley Downham, which is an amateur club, and it's also a youth centre for the area. And it's done a lot of good for both male and females in that particular part of the world. And the club nearly went bankrupt and closed down. They reached out to me and a few others and said, would you mind funding it and raising some money, which I did.
Wow.
And then they said, can you come down and be a part of the opening? And suddenly 3 or 4 green not Rolls Royces, Range Rovers pulled up, and he jumped out and shook his hand and met him. And it was incredible. I was not expecting it.
Did you get to have a conversation with him?
A very, very short one, yeah. Because he said he was into boxing. He was a big guy as well, like huge hands, I remember.
He's very tall.
Very tall guy, big, broad guy. And he said he was really into boxing, and we just had a very, very short chat, and that was it.
I didn't get really to talk. I was lined up in a procession, and I'd practiced my curtsy. I was so nervous. And as they were introducing me, I could hear somebody behind them both saying, I just heard my name, editor of Glamour magazine. And all I remember is Prince Philip going, ooh, and that was it. That's my interaction with Prince Philip.
I know you said before we started that you're actually doing like a talk, or you're a part of a show that is to do with the promotion of the royal family or something like that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yes, until recently I worked for the Mail group of newspapers, and when I was there, they launched this video show that they do every week called Palace Confidential. And so it was just part of my job when I worked there. And when I resigned, luckily for me, they asked me if I'd stay on and keep doing that. So now, instead of like adding it to my duties, I get paid to do it, which is great. And I really enjoy doing it. So all I have to do is sit there. I host a panel and we talk about the royal issues of the day and whatever's in the news. And I remember when they said, we want to start this show, it's called Palace Confidential, all of us involved were like, you're not going to get weekly content out of the royal family. And every week it's something different. There's just, that is the news that keeps on giving. And so I just asked the guests, I've interviewed an author who's got a book out about the Queen today, and we just sit and shoot the breeze about what people think. And, you know, what's weird though is like, I would say I'm kind of, for want of a better word, sort of indifferent to the royal family. I'm not pro-royal, I'm not anti-royal. I'm an Australian who's done very well out of being part of the Commonwealth and being allowed to come and work here. So I'm, you know, you do you. I'm quite happy to have the royal family. But now I find myself, you know, at dinner parties or parties, and someone will say something about Harry or Meghan, and I'm like, oh, well, no, actually. And I accidentally know so much about the damn royal family, and I'd never wanted to. But there you go.
Yeah, interesting stuff. We spoke also about their sort of cult following that they've got, and I saw it firsthand when the Queen died. I live in Kent, so I came up with my two sons and also my wife and some of the other extended family, and we watched them practice before the big day on that. I think it was the bank holiday on the Sunday.
Wow, yeah.
And then a week later, I went back to see the flowers and stuff, just to have a bit of a day out, and also just to go and have a look around, because this is a very, very kind of important part of our lives. And the amount of foreigners, you know, Canada, America, you know, different parts of Europe coming over, and these people, some people were actually crying.
Oh yeah,
they were so moved by it. And me being English, and the Queen's been in my whole entire life, I was a bit like, listen, sad day, but I'm not going to shed a tear because I don't naturally feel like I need to. But I do appreciate this is a very, very sad time. But to be a foreigner, not living here, and actually crying, it demonstrated to me, you know, what a big following she had and the royal family have. Longest serving monarch, something that, you know, we've only ever known the Queen to be there. And I think when I was a little girl, I've said this before, it's like my grandmother really looked like the Queen. So I used to have dreams where my nan was the Queen or the Queen was my nan. And so I think everybody's kind of got that sort of connection in some way or another. And I think that what I didn't realize at first, because I was thinking, gosh, it is sad, but she was, you know, a 90-odd-year-old woman. Old people will eventually pass away. But I think I think a lot of people that you saw crying were probably, it just churns up so many other things. It's like, I think for me, it, you know, again, because I live over here and I haven't seen my family since before COVID, when we've got to that point in our lifeline where the Queen has died, suddenly you'll start looking at your own parents and seeing their aging. And I think it churns up all that for people as well. Mm. Some of the comments that people have made about the royal family, can you share anything? Well, I mean, doing the show, the comments are more about the people on it. So if you happen to say something, if you happen to have a bit of a critique about maybe something Harry's done, you will get hate for it online. They've really got their fans. And what I find really fascinating is you've got the hardcore now Princess of Wales fans, Kate Middleton fans, and the hardcore Duchess of Sussex fans. And sometimes I think they would knife each other in an alley. There's such ugly rhetoric between them. And I don't know, there's like these people, I don't think that, I don't understand caring and being obsessed to that degree. I'm quite fine for the royal family to have their fans and for people to take an interest, but to be so obsessed that you're screaming at people online about your perceived idea of their relationship with each other is that's extreme for me. Yeah. Do you I'm digressing here a little bit, and we're just talking. I love a digress. We're talking about the royal. I mean, this should be a royal family episode, right? With Harry and Meghan, I think more Meghan. I haven't actually watched the interview, but going on Oprah Winfrey and having that exclusive chat and some of the things she said. Do you think that was a good move by her? Well, I think that it's what I struggle with Harry and Meghan is when they said they wanted to leave, they wanted to have a quiet life, they hated the goldfish bowl reality of British media. I think
it was very few people who couldn't sympathize with that and understand that. I genuinely thought they wanted to go to wherever it was, Canada, America, Africa was talked about apparently that they might go and live a quiet life. So for my money, I just feel like for somebody who I've constantly heard had her voice silenced, what was it Oprah said? Were you silent or were you silenced? And I don't think I've ever heard anybody else's voice more this year than I've heard Meghan's. So that's where I struggle. I struggle with that, and I struggle with just call me Meghan. I hate these royal titles. I don't want to be part of that thing. And yet every commercial product they've put out there has her title on it, the royal title. So I think they need their currency is their royalty. So I think it's a really confusing thing for them. And I don't know. I wish them well, and who wouldn't want somebody to have a happy, quiet, private life? So go and have one. That's my view.
It's almost like they want the best of both worlds.
Of course,
you want that independent life where you can do whatever you want to do, but when it suits you, you turn on the royal status.
And I think that that's what people struggle with, and I think that what Meghan, didn't quite understand was the situation where being part of the royal family comes with great wealth and great privilege and great status. But the transaction is you're funded by the taxpayers. And that's why people feel entitled to have an opinion, why people feel that they should be accountable. And I feel like perhaps she didn't quite understand. It must be great being part of the royal family, but let's be honest, it's a lot of eating warm sandwiches in church halls as well. And I don't think that aspect of it really suited Meghan.
And on the topic of taxpayer, do you feel that the royal family distribute the taxpayers' money in the right way?
Oh God, who knows, right? I don't know how much they're actually. I mean, I have a very Republican nephew in his 20s, and I love winding him up at Christmas just by saying, "Oh, it's only 85p per household," and he gets drunk and gets really angry with me. But I think that, you said it earlier yourself, the streets were absolutely teeming with people from all over the world when the Queen passed. I can see the argument for the tourism attraction. And I also see, having done the royal show, the power of the royal family's soft diplomacy is very, very helpful. If you watch any of The Crown, the government's always desperate in that show for the Queen to entertain the Kennedys, and I think that they definitely have a value in that respect as well.
And last serious question, Harry and Meghan, who wears the trousers in that relationship?
Oh man, who do you think? But do you know what? I think that Harry likes that Meghan takes charge. I think that it's really interesting to me, the title of his book, Spare. I think that in a lot of ways, he's been quite traumatized by his upbringing. He's been quite obviously damaged by his mother's death, we all feel still for that little boy walking behind that coffin in the glare of the world. I think he was looking for somebody to give him a bit of direction and a bit of a different approach to life. So I think he likes that she takes the lead. So when I say Meghan wears the trousers, I think a lot of tabloids and press over here use that as a statement to put her down, but I don't. I think that that's just good for her.
Talking about people being critiqued or abused or comments made to them. Yourself, you're very successful. You're verified on Instagram, 72,000 followers. I sound like a stalker.
It's hardly Kim Kardashian numbers, but
But it's still a lot.
It's all right.
It's still a lot, and it's only growing. And you've done so much good. Some of the nasty comments that you might have got over the years, can you share some?
It's mostly on Twitter, really. Instagram, I find on the whole a much friendlier place. This is why I've sort of gravitated more to it over the years. Let me think. God, people say. It's hilarious. What I hate, actually, more than, you get the odd, somebody said to me, 1985 called and wants its makeup back. You get a lot of that. I really don't care about you're ugly, you were shit on this thing. I honestly don't care. It's the really smug ones that drive me crazy. Absolutely drive me crazy. There was one woman years ago, I remember I just made a joke on Twitter when my daughter was like 3 or 4, and there was a film screening on that both my husband and I got invited to. And we basically flipped a coin over who would go and see it. I can't remember what it was, but we were both desperate to see it. And he got to go, and I said, I've won mum points tonight. I'm staying home to babysit my daughter while my husband goes see this film that we all want to see. And somebody went, when it's your own child, it's called parenting. And I just thought, oh, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know what I mean? It's just a joke. And I actually fired back and said, yeah, I know, calm down. And she went, wow, I didn't expect to get told off at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was like, love, neither did I. It's like, and it's those ones. I remember she was about 11 and she was on school holiday, but she goes to a school where at the time they got 2 weeks half-term holiday when everybody else got 1. And I said, I'm getting mum points today. I'm taking my daughter to meet Jessie J at a photo shoot. Someone said, shouldn't she be at school? And I was like, no. It's like, it's those ones that upset me more than just people being nasty. I really don't care what you think about the way I look, or when I've got this hashtag on Instagram called clothes my husband hates. My husband slags off most of my outfits, so there's very little you can say to me online that is worse than what I've heard at home. And occasionally someone will say, oh my God, that's revolting, or I'm with your husband, I hate that. And it's like, dude, I don't care what the man I live with thinks. Why, I don't care what random stranger thinks about what I'm wearing. So, I most of it is off a duck's back.
Yeah. On the subject of social media, bar this, what you just spoke about, what is your relationship like with it? And what do you think about the whole, because look, I'm 36, as I gave you a sales pitch to get onto my podcast, right? And part of that sales pitch is when I was younger and I was a complete flop at school and had no direction, there was no such thing as podcasts, there was no such thing as social media. Had there been, and the reason why I'm doing conversations like this, I'm hoping someone's going to listen to this, only one person, and gets inspiration from my guest and goes off and uses that information from their own life. That's my goal, okay? So I do have a love and appreciation for social media, of course.
Yeah, so do I.
There's also a hate there because mental health, comparing yourself to the Kardashians or to the Joneses.
Yeah.
There is the other side of the abusive side. Can you share a bit of your wisdom about that?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't had much abuse, and but I am also the sort of person who, I think I would have been in my 30s when I had a lot of therapy for stress management. I'd been fired from a job when I was about 29, and it really did a number on my confidence. It was the first time that something like that had ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Real sort of like head girl mentality, perfectionist, worked really hard to get where I was. So to be young and be told, we don't want you anymore for the first time was really tough to deal with. So I ended up going to therapy. And the work that I did there was really a lot about whether someone's saying something really horrible to you or really nice to you, what counts is what you think of you. And I've worked really hard on that in sort of like making sure that, nobody's perfect and we all make mistakes and say terrible things and, and all those things. But I've worked really hard on, well, what do you think of you? And other people's opinions of you aren't really your business. What's going on in that other person's head who said something nasty to you. It's got nothing to do with who you actually are and everything to do with what's gone on in their day and what terrible thing has happened to them the day before that's made them angry. And so that's where I tend to come from it. Now, I'm not a celebrity, so I have friends who have millions of followers. And I appreciate that when you're being hammered thousands of times a day instead of tens of times a day, that's a harder thing to get your head around. But for me, there was one recently that did really upset me. It was because I've started work in April. I work 3 days a week as the CEO of a charity called Children with Cancer UK. So that's my main gig, for want of a better word. And this woman, I'd been there about 3 months, and this woman started saying to me on Twitter, I just feel so sorry for those sick children. Why don't you care enough to do it more than 3 days a week? And, couldn't they get anybody better? Now, the thing is, she's entitled to have that opinion. And actually, I think, I get paid 3 days a week. I certainly work a lot more than 3 days a week on it, but that's fine. But she was absolutely, I've never heard of her. She didn't really know who I was. She was so just convinced that I am going to suck at this job. And she kept coming at me for days. And that one did upset me. And I just had to put the phone down and just stop engaging. But it's, you know, we all occasionally get hurt by those things. So I haven't got the bulletproof piece of advice on how to handle it. But you just have to be rational about what's worth listening to in your life and what's worth giving permission to in terms of an opinion. You know, you could say to me, you know, I think you're an idiot. And I'd kind of have to give you permission to let that affect me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So being a parent, I'm a parent. I've got 2 young boys. One's 1 and one's 4 years of age. And I've got hopefully a little while before they even start considering using social media.
Yeah.
But again, podcasts, you need to use your social media, and it's part of my business. Woodbury House is our art gallery in Mayfair. And even though we're not directly talking about art, it's good for people to listen to conversations like this and then funnel through and go, oh, you know, part of this art company, and they might end up turning into collectors, which has happened loads of times. So I get the use of social media. I think it's healthy when you use it like that.
Yeah.
But I am fearful that they might go on there and they might be looking at some big icon of football, like Ronaldo, for example, perfect lifestyle, it appears, or their mate who lives in Dubai, who's got this perfect sun lifestyle, and they're just driving Lamborghinis, etc., and that can actually lead to massive depression.
Yep.
What about, you know, your own daughter when she started, or
it's tough
talking about, you know, using social media? She's
obsessed with TikTok, which drives me crazy. She herself, though, it's interesting. I think that as much as, yes, they're very real and valid fears, and I have them as well, particularly having a young woman. You know, there's so much body dysmorphia and weight obsession and photoshopping perfection and all of those things. But hand in hand with that, I think that her generation talks very analytically about those things as well. So she knows when a photo's been manipulated. She knows that what she's seeing on somebody's feed is curated and only one part of their life. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because she also knows that it's okay to talk about mental health struggles. But then sometimes I worry that everyone's talking about their mental health so much that everybody feels like maybe there's what I call like awareness of awareness, and people sort of like maybe lean in too much to thinking they've got anxiety when they're just having a stressful day. So it's such a complicated web of stuff. But my point is that she's got the self-awareness now. She's 17, nearly 18. She just stopped engaging with Instagram probably about 2 years ago because she had the self-awareness that it made her feel bad. And she just decided that I'm just not going to expose myself to something that I know makes me feel bad. And I was really proud of her for that.
That's really good.
I think with boys, what I worry about is, you know, and this is, you won't have to think about this yet, but the access to porn, I think, is a huge, huge problem for young men and young women. And there doesn't seem to be anybody really wanting to step up to sort that out. I think that is an epidemic that we don't talk about, that's leading to abuse and self-esteem issues and all sorts of things. And that's the thing that frightens me more than anything.
It's like, you know, they're so powerful, these platforms, got so much money.
And there's so much access.
But it seems like there's certain issues that they won't police almost. I mean, look, when the whole lockdown coronavirus come up, if you even say the word in a supporting way or against way, you get a warning that comes up. Fine, I understand that. Fact find and all that kind of stuff. But you say something else that isn't on their agenda, it's not censored at all. And
I think that we're long past the days when, you know, there was a time, particularly Facebook used to argue, well, we're not a content provider, we're just a facilitator. But I think that I think it's absolutely insane that, you know, people love to slag off the media here, they love to slag off newspapers, but there is so much regulation, there's so many laws that still don't apply to social media platforms. And that, you know, I'm not a censor I'm not pro censorship, but something's got to change. There has to be regulation. When you've got a court case recently that showed that Instagram, social media rather, contributed to the suicide of a young woman, a teenage girl. I mean, what bigger wake-up call is there than that?
Yeah. You said about therapy. So was you at one stage in your life depressed?
Oh, I think that I've definitely had bouts of it. I think it looms large in my family. I've spoken before. My grandmother took her own life. So, my mother has sort of like suffered it on and off with it. So it's something that it's just in our DNA, and it has been, it can be hereditary. It's a chemical thing. So I think that I've just become very sensitive to that. So I'm very, if I've worried about that, I will do something about it. I'm very good at sort of self-managing in that way because I don't want to be like that. But when I was a kid, you're younger than me. I was a teenager in the 80s, and there was no such thing as mental health problems for teenagers in the 80s, apparently. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you're a kid. What do you got to worry about? But I look back on, I was being bullied at school, didn't have many friends. I spent as much time as I possibly could listening to Smith's albums in my bedroom all weekend, all day. And I look back and realize you were depressed, but there was no language for it around then as a teenager. So I think that I've just, I think it's important to talk about it. Yeah.
And I agree with you where you got to talk about it because it was such a taboo subject for a long time, especially in men as well. Because, we're
absolutely
I can't speak for any other country because I've not been born in any other country, but in the UK, my mum and dad were a product of what I'm about to say, which is, as a man, it's like, get up, sort yourself out, dust yourself off. I mean, I saw a quote once.
That phrase, man up.
Man up.
Yeah.
And I saw a quote once which said something along the lines of, this is not verbatim, it was, I once died and then my mum told me to man up or something like that. And the extreme of that quote is, that's basically the product I'm from. And I've got to be honest, I think personally for me, it's helped.
Yeah.
It's helped. But with somebody else, that won't help them. And they are suffering and stuff. But at the same time, I do feel there are individuals that will lean on the whole mental health, I'm feeling anxiety, depression.
It's such a difficult line to tread, isn't it? Because I agree with you. I think that we're slightly in danger of ignoring the value of resilience. We're slightly in danger of ignoring, this too shall pass. Keep going. It's really hard, and I'm not qualified to answer the question, but it's hard. We don't want people to struggle. We don't want people to be so low that they do something terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't know if more and more people are depressed or just more and more people are talking about it. I don't know.
Yeah. Because, I feel like I'm talking about myself here a lot, but boxing is my last boxing coach. You get hit with a good shot in the stomach or whatever, and it's don't show any emotion, don't show no fear, keep on coming forward, keep on fighting. Great advice for boxing, fantastic advice.
Yeah.
But in the real world, it's almost training you to say, even if I've got something wrong, I won't talk about it. I won't show no emotion. I'll keep on plodding forward.
And that's dangerous.
And sometimes that by acting as if, you can actually manifest that into your own life and get through it.
Fake it to make it.
But then other scenarios where that same person will be smiling one day, the next day they killed herself.
I know.
And that has happened. And I know friends of friends that's literally happened to. Or they turn massively onto drink and drugs.
Yeah.
And it's chaotic. And I'm accountable to this. If someone done something, and if I sort of fairly knew them, especially if there was a fella, sorry to swear, but I'll be like, stop being a pussy, dust yourself off, and crack on with it. And sometimes when I say that to people, it can actually really put a boot up their backside, and they're going to carry on. Because my mum was like that with me.
Right.
But I also know that in today's world, can be deemed as the wrong approach to take.
I think it's just important, as much as we possibly can, to have people that we can talk to. And for some people, that might be the right advice. But if somebody knows that you're the person they can turn to, and, you know, it might be, I have friends who, you know, I had a bit of a setback this week, and I phoned the friend who I knew would really get it and really understand. Whereas other times I might think, I need that friend who's just going to make me laugh this off and say, you know, so it's kind of like making sure that you've got that network, isn't it? Who've got you back in one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. So anyway, going back to your career, right? So on the 12th of October, 2017.
Where was I?
Yeah.
You know more than I do. So
you leave Glamour magazine after 17 years. Why did you leave?
Because they made me redundant. I love it when people ask me that. I think it's interesting. I think people want you to be ashamed of things like that. But it's just what happened. You know, the media landscape changed. It wasn't selling as much as it used to. It wasn't making as much advertising money. They wanted to make huge changes to the business, and they made most of us redundant and changed it. That, you know, it doesn't come out 12 times a year anymore. I think it comes out twice, and it's mostly an online publication, and they didn't want to pay me anymore. It was too expensive. So that's what happened. I think I wrote a whole thing. I've got a Substack newsletter. I think the more interesting question is, why the hell did I stay that long? Because I was scared to leave. I kind of couldn't envisage any other role for myself. I'd become institutionalized and thought, well, nobody else will want me. I'm not good at anything else. And so that I kind of, ironically, in that job, particularly towards the end, lost my confidence in the idea that I could do anything else. So they kind of did me a favor. I wouldn't have left on my own.
So when they said you were basically being fired, how did you feel?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I knew for a while that my star there had faded. I knew, you know, suddenly there were important dinners or drinks receptions that I wasn't invited to anymore. There were meetings I heard about after they'd happened that I'd normally be invited to. You know, I knew that something was up. But I didn't realize, I thought I was getting fired. I didn't realize they were doing what they were doing to the whole business. And so they were explaining to me, we're going to take it online. We're going to make it more, it's not going to be as broad about fashion and other stuff anymore. It's just going to be about beauty. And I was sitting there panicking, thinking, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't. And then they said, so your role is at risk. And I remember going, okay, they want me to go. Oh, okay, this is good. So I was kind of relieved that I knew that I hadn't been going mad, and that, I was on the out. Yeah.
And then after that, Mail on Sunday, You magazine.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that? Why did you pursue that?
Because they asked me if I was interested, and it was a job. It was a magazine that I'd looked at for a long time. It hadn't really changed much in about 30 years. And I used to think, oh, that'd be a good, you know, I couldn't figure out what I would do after Glamour. And I used to think that would be a great job. It's weekly. It's a huge audience. You've got to appeal to tons of different kinds of people. You get to really be more creative, because with Glamour, that front cover was like live or die on the newsstand every month. All the pressure of the sale wasn't on what was on my cover, because the front page of the newspaper was. So I could be more creative there. So I just thought it'd be a great fun job to do, and it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bar, drinking lots of wine and being an expert at the royal family, what do you get up to now, and what's the plans for the future?
Well, I've started this role this year at Children with Cancer UK, and I really want to. That's a 35-year-old charity that doesn't have a huge profile. I want to change its profile. I want to modernize its look. I want to earn more money for it, because we spend millions on research into childhood cancers.
Okay.
Children, cancer is one of the biggest killers of children in this country. So it's a huge opportunity for me to help make a difference there. And in tandem with that, I want to just keep pursuing projects that are fun for me. So Mail Online, Mail Plus, Palace Confidential show. I'm launching a podcast this month called Fame, which has got some fantastic guests on it. I'm doing writing. I might write a book, feeling a bit lazy about that right now, but I think I will. So I just want to see, I used to be really fearful of life in my 50s and beyond, but now I'm more curious, and that's a much nicer mentality to go into it with.
You said podcast. Haven't you got Is It Just Me podcast?
Yes, James Williams, my friend, and I did that for a while. We started that at Glamour, and then they let us take it when we all left Glamour. We haven't done that. We probably haven't recorded any of those for a year, but they're still there. Is It Just Me? It's all, things like we drag a celebrity in and ask things like, is it just me who judges you harshly if your toilet paper is any color but white? And we sit and talk about absolute ridiculous stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
And presenting, you was on shows like Lorraine.
Oh yeah, I still do that. Yeah.
And this morning.
Yep.
Presenting, is it something you still really enjoy?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. That's more, it's not really, I don't think I'm the next Holly Willoughby or anything like that, but it's fun. And I really like that they asked me to do it. So, and it's another muscle to flex, being able to think on your feet on live TV.
Talk about her. I can't remember if it's her or there's someone else. Like, maybe not, it's not her. Someone's just done a L'Oreal advert or something, but on their social media, and
probably Holly.
And as they turn, her boob is been going mad on.
I do not. This one has passed me by.
It's exposed and it's making rounds at the moment. Yeah, and I don't know whether she's done it on purpose to get more hits.
Would you like to just go and have some private time with that right now? Am I holding you up? But no, I don't know anything about that. But now I really want to check Instagram.
You got to look. Don't think it's her. It's
I wonder who it is.
I'll show you after.
Holly wouldn't let that happen. Surely.
I know.
The nation's sweetheart would not let that happen.
Free the nipple.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I've enjoyed it.
And taking some time. Yeah. I'm obviously going to stay in contact about Woodbury House and doing some projects with us.
Please.
On that note, Richard Hamilton, I know you said you've heard of them. We've got some of his fantastic work on the wall.
Stunning.
What is your first impressions of Richard Hamilton artworks?
Rock star. They're just so... he really was the founder of, fabulous graffiti, wasn't he? Like that street art. And it's just extraordinary to me, and you're really putting me on the spot. I feel so Australian and uneducated now because I don't know much about art. But I love it. It almost looks like he's just gone in and on his way to make a cup of tea, splattered a canvas and come up with that magic, which I just think is gorgeous.
Yeah, he truly is the godfather of street art.
Yeah.
One last question. I've got a mantra, okay? Being as positive as I try to be daily, I remind myself of this mantra, and it goes like this: be happy, never content. So if I were to ask yourself, Joe, Elvin, not Elvin.
I'm going with Elvan now.
Elvan.
Yeah.
The German version.
No, French.
French.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does be happy, never content mean to you?
I think it means that my view on happiness is people seem to think that happiness is some goal in the future. And if you've got this and this and this and this, one day you will be happy. And in my job, I meet very tiny cancer patients who have a moment of the day where they're belly laughing about something. So I think that everybody's life can have pockets of joy, and that you can get to the end of the day and feel gratitude for something good that happened, even in the midst of a great struggle. And that they really inspire me in that way. So I think that it's just about finding those pockets along the way and not worrying about the destination. Does that make sense? What does it mean to you? I don't really understand what you mean.
Be happy, never content.
Yeah.
So I believe happiness is, you're not always going to be happy, you're not always going to be sad, but even in the darkest days, you can find the silver lining.
So that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the be happy part is, even in tough days, being happy because you're alive and being happy that you're experiencing this, which is a lesson. And never content is almost, what is next? It's not about being greedy.
Don't settle.
But it's about upgrading yourself all the time. What next chapter can you attack and be great at that?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by be happy, never content.
My thing is, what can you do today? Don't worry about the things that are overwhelming you. Don't worry about what you can't do today. Don't worry about that thing that might never happen, or you feel like it's not getting anywhere. If I'm really stressed and got too much to do and have plans that I feel like I haven't really got anywhere with, I just sit and try to not have any of the noise and just think, okay, well, today, what's one thing that you can do? And if I can do that one thing, then I feel like I've gone along the way to achieving something.
Perfect answer. Perfect soundbite there. Be happy, never content. Please subscribe, share, do all the good stuff, and I look forward to getting your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.